Back again to your right. Back to your right, back to your right. Hey everybody, it's Eddie from Tokyo. This is your cryptocurrency update from Japan, and that intro was Zimbabwe's governor showing off the gold and other precious metal-backed currency. They started trading on Monday, followed by the central bank announcement that was made last Friday. All prices will be denominated in ZIG, Z-I-G. That's the official name of the issued fiat. And it is, well, to start, only $285 million in US dollars has been backed up. We'll follow it closely. The market is mixed. You can see the top 300 by market cap. And yeah, it's just a mixed bag with Bitcoin still sitting at the $70,000 mark. I've got some great clips from Pomp. He had Robbie Mitchnick on his panel and asked him a lot of great questions about the Bitcoin ETF. And if you don't know, Robbie used to work at Ripple, but it's so strange that he totally wiped his Ripple previous work history from his LinkedIn. I don't know. Go figure. And in the world of DeFi, we're talking about Moai Finance hitting a milestone with 10 million total trading volume reached. And if you don't know, they have the digital asset XRP in 4 different pairs with their liquidity pools, and also a very solid borrow and lend solution with some very good APYs. When builders build, everything is shipped. I'm showing off a little bit of the ecosystem that is pretty impressive for Flare Networks, being that it's a pretty new chain. Just think of what this is going to look like a year from now, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now. I was looking for an update from John Deaton coming from a Massachusetts media, and I did find that Senator Warren on Friday released her 2023 tax returns, and she calls on her challengers to do the same. All of her returns since the year 2008 are listed, and that's what she has done for her transparency since she began public service. I'm really excited to see what comes out of the Paris Blockchain Week. It started today. There is just too many fantastic speakers to list. If you were not able to go in person, you can get a digital ticket for about $500 US. I'll let those clips that I think are some of the best from a 30-minute conversation that Pomp had with Robbie Mitchnick at his Bitcoin Investor Day. So until next time, do take care. Sayonara for now. Bye-bye.
All right, next up, we have Robbie Mitchnick, who is the head of digital assets at Blackrock. Robbie is by far, I think, one of the smartest institutional investors and operators that has figured out some of the value proposition of Bitcoin, and then done immense work internally at Blackrock to get them on board. And we'll see if he was part of the Larry Fink orange pill. But Robbie, come on up. All right. How did Blackrock decide that you guys wanted to get into the Bitcoin game?
Well, we didn't just wake up one day and make that decision. I think that, you look at our journey, it goes back really now 6-7 years. And it starts with studying the technology and this emerging asset class in a very measured way out of the gate, right? And I think if you look at the state of what it was then versus what it's become, that really paints the picture of how we ended up making the moves that we did, right? In terms of the state of infrastructure and institutionalization, that has come a very long way, particularly in the last 3 or 4 years, right? the state of the regulatory climate. It's not perfect, obviously, but that has come a long way. And then most importantly for us, the level of interest that we had from our client base that was consistent and enduring even through the bull and bear market cycles. We saw that very clear pattern that our clients were increasingly interested in this and increasingly frustrated by the availability of efficient, turnkey, convenient, secure exposure solutions with which to get into this space. And so when you put all those together and you add sort of the capabilities that we built over multiple years, then you get to where we are today.
So take me inside the organization. You all do this work. At some point, there's kind of a 0 to 1 decision. Hey, we should do something in the space. ETFs, you all have a stellar track record. I think at the time of filing, it was 575 and 1. Is there a fear that I don't want to be the one to be the second, 575 and 2? Or why ETFs, and kind of how did you build the confidence to say, hey, look, we think actually we can get this through with the regulators?
Well, there's certainly a lot of things that we considered in that decision, but I can tell you that one thing that we never considered was what will it do to our win-loss approval record. It came down to, if you think about some of the things that we did that laid the foundation, right? Starting in 2021, we began working with Coinbase, Coinbase Prime, to integrate from a technology capability standpoint their prime brokerage, trading, custody into our Aladdin investment solution, so that crypto, specifically Bitcoin, out of the gate, could be part of the whole portfolio for the Aladdin clients that chose it to be. And then in 2022, we launched a private Bitcoin fund, right? Which was really important in terms, one, that was all you could do from a regulatory standpoint at that time. But two, in terms of developing the capabilities as an asset manager in this space, that was limited to our largest institutional clients in the US, but it was a really critical stepping stone. Then you get to start of 2023, and that's when we started to put the pieces in place to take that next step and deliver the ETF, which at that point we had massive and clear client demand, right? That they were frustrated with how difficult it had been to get exposure. You had some clients who had tried to get exposure in this space, and they'd been subjected to high fees, high risk, underperformance of the price of Bitcoin, in many cases all three, or maybe even worse, they missed it entirely, which was, Bitcoin is the top performing asset in the world the last decade and 7 of the last 10 years. And they missed it because they didn't have the wrapper, the format in a convenient, accessible way. You have really kind of 3 buckets you could put it in, right? One is end investors direct, and that channel, right out of the gate, has been very strong. Obviously, a lot of interest and demand, right from small dollar up to ultra high net worth type players. Then you have wealth advisory, which many of those home offices are wealth advisory partners. They're still undergoing their diligence processes, right? So for a lot of these firms, it's not approved at all, or it's not approved other than on an unsolicited basis where the client has to ask, the advisor can't propose it. So that's still, pretty early days. And then on the institutional side, we're having lots of great conversations with a lot of sort of research and diligence and education happening, but that's early. They just operate on a longer time scale. And so it'll be interesting to see, as the months and quarters unfold, how those other channels start to come on. The Bitcoin and crypto industry broadly has not done a good job at all of speaking the language of traditional investors, right? And one of the, I think, most confusing, unhelpful things that happened in the post-COVID era was you had people sort of accept this idea that Bitcoin was a risk-on asset, whatever that even means, right? It's kind of devoid of fundamental basis, that concept to begin with. But Bitcoin is a risky asset, right? it is volatile. It has a lot of uncertainty. But risk on is a different thing, right? It implies correlation to equities, fixed income, what have you. And what happened was Bitcoin has one, in our view, fundamental macro variable where it is highly correlated with equities. And that is, it is massively short real interest rates, right? It is short nominal rates and it is long inflation expectations. And real interest rates is nominal rates less inflation expectations. So it's massively short real interest rates. And real interest rates drove every asset under the sun between 2020 and kind of early 2023, right? They collapsed, therefore a lot of assets, including Bitcoin, rocketed. And then they surged as the Fed started hiking and inflation expectations rolled over. And so the Bitcoin community sort of embraced this idea that it was a risk-on asset, which I think was problematic for two reasons. One, because it was actually counterproductive to them. But two, more importantly, it's probably wrong, right? If we think about long-term fundamentals and what it means to be a global, decentralized, scarce, non-sovereign asset, a lot of those fundamentals paint, and Mike was talking about some of these dynamics and challenges to U.S. fiscal situation and otherwise, they paint a very different conclusion in terms of how to think about it versus other assets on a long-term basis. So what's happened is those institutional investors, they get kind of this digital gold hypothesis, but then they look at the past data from 2020 to 2022 and they go, well, long-term correlation was low, but then it spiked. So how do we think about this in portfolio construction? So that's the kind of education journey that we're on.
Should we expect BlackRock to now go from Bitcoin, kind of building this fund on Ethereum, and here comes everything else? And as Mike said, dog with hat is going to be the next fund you guys launch. Like, how do you think about what that fund is, and then kind of like the long tail of these assets?
Crypto Twitter would love to believe that dog with hat ETF is coming next. I actually don't know what dog with hat even is. I didn't get that reference, but
that answers that question.
What I can say is that for our client base, it is Bitcoin overwhelmingly number one, their focus, a little bit in Ethereum, and very, very little everything else. And when you think about it in terms of, various metrics and dimensions, I mean, Bitcoin, 52% of the market cap of the whole asset class, Ethereum, but 17-ish today, maybe 18. And the next that is even sort of investable is like 3, right? And so there's just worlds apart there in terms of, track record, liquidity, product market fit, investor narrative clarity, all these things, right? So that's where I think there's some misplaced speculation that there's going to be a long tail of others from us, and that's really not where we're focused.
I was shocked when Larry Fink went on television and said people are buying Bitcoin because it is a flight to quality. I joked with friends, I may have tweeted and said, it's almost like he's the chief marketing officer of Bitcoin. Put aside the honorary title.
So you came up with that title.
Yes, I came up with that title, not you. But
I certainly did.
To talk a little bit about this idea of BlackRock going out and talking about it, because you guys could have just filed an ETF, right? But actually having Larry or others from the firm talk about this and this idea of flight to quality, it's very different, right? If a Bitcoiner goes and says that, people, okay, whatever. But when a firm that frankly has built their reputation on helping investors find quality assets and allocate for the long term, has done a very good job of doing that, says it has a different weight to it. And so how do you guys think about, maybe internal thoughts versus what you share with clients versus kind of, public communication around this?
Yeah, well, I think, when you have topics that are novel and complex, our clients expect us to be a thought leader and a thought partner with them, right? So that comes with the territory, and that's what, made our digital assets journey over 6-7 years be a very deliberate, measured process, right? Because we understood, the importance of our weight and our voice, and to get to a point where we are today, that took a lot of study and experience and education. And, the things that we say come from a measured, thoughtful place, right? It's not by accident.
What have you been surprised by? The amount of inflows, the type of people buying the ETF, maybe something internally, like just what surprised you? Because I think it would really help us identify like the difference between expectations and what ended up happening. And so like those surprises probably are pretty informative as well.
I think the biggest surprise has just been the breadth of investor types that the ETF has resonated with, and the level of variation in rationales for wanting the ETF. So when we talk about small dollar all the way up to ultra high net worth, we talk about wealth advisory, institutional, and myriad use cases and rationales for, well, I used to hold this way and now I prefer to hold through the ETF because X or because Y or because Z. There's just been way more of those than I think we ever expected.